All right. Hello, today we will be interviewing UKKA Senior Black Belt Brandy Brown. Thank you for doing this interview and sharing your time with me in the UKKA. Our first question is, how did you get into martial arts and what was the beginning like?
Okay. So I would have to say that growing up, I was always kind of a tomboy. And I do remember trying out different extracurricular activities when I was little. Like my parents had put me in like ballet and tap and jazz, softball, soccer I did for a couple years, but none of those really felt very connected to me. And I'm going to reference, I don't know if you know the show, Xena Warrior Princess.
Mm-mm.
Okay, you'll have to look it up later. But I remember watching this as a kid and thinking, like, I want to be Xena Warrior Princess. So in my high school years or junior high years, when I was about 14, I was walking down UKKA's market night. They had this big market night, and that's where the first studio was. And I just remember kind of staring at into the window and being really intrigued by it. So I was nervous to join, so I got 3 of my girlfriends to do it with me, and we were going to join in kickboxing. So we started out in the kickboxing, all 4 of us together. I would say the first 2 of them left after maybe the first couple weeks or the month. And then me and my best friend Katie were remaining, and she stayed actually for a little while. And you may or may not have seen it, but Master Siegfried taught us a whole stick routine that we ended up doing, and she created the clothes for it, and we put it to a Zorro soundtrack, and that was pretty awesome. But she ended up having to leave at some point because of she had a lot of other extracurricular activities that kind of took precedent for her. When she left, I went from kickboxing into the karate martial arts program as a white belt. And yeah, that's kind of the start. But I would say I loved it from day one. And I would say, like, you know that feeling with like, or that sound when you kick the bag up high and it's like makes a little pop, and then you have a real hard one in the middle, and you're like, just the whole sensory experience, everything about it connected with me. And I'm a person, I think, that's competitive with myself, and that connected with me too.
Yeah. Where did most of your training take place?
So most of my training was with Martial Arts Unlimited. That was with Grandmaster Morgan, and Grandmaster Pierre Berger was there at the time. But we would have lots of instructors come in and out. So Mr. Siegfried, and he would bring in like, I remember a couple nurses, I think they were nurses, Dave and Dan, and they would come in and they would show us things like grappling, ground fighting, which I really loved. I think we even had somebody who was a wrestler, Carlos. He would come in and also do some grappling. I did a little bit of training, very little bit of training in a studio in Banning, where I learned to use the fans.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was nice. Martial Arts Unlimited really gave me an opportunity to have like unlimited access to various teachers in martial arts. That said, one thing I took away from at all the places I was at, and I'm going to say we started in one studio, we went to another studio, then we went to the Women's Center, and then we ended up training even in the park. So you can do martial arts anywhere.
Yeah. All right. How has martial arts helped you in your everyday life?
I would say, and this will probably be kind of a common thing that I go back to, is there's this sense of confidence, calm, and self-control. A lot of training your body to be automatic. So I probably should have mentioned in the beginning, I'm a mental health therapist, so I work with people where emotional regulation is a very big thing that I do. And to me, there's this whole mind-body connection. So martial arts for me is kind of the epitome of that mind-body connection. If you can control your body, you can control your mind, and vice versa. So I would say definitely use this sort of discipline and regulation, even with clients, to be able to know themselves better. would say there's a really interesting thing that I really thought about is, I don't know if you think about like people's body language when you're sparring them or things like that. Part of what I do in therapy is kind of like monitor people's body language. And I realized that that's a skill that I got in martial arts. And I just thought that's a little bit interesting. But,
Nice. What is your favorite martial arts memory?
Okay, I'm going to share, I think, a couple of memories that I feel like were maybe some of the moments that I felt the most proud of myself. Both of them were during tournaments. So we used to do a CMAF tournament pretty frequently, and I think it was California Martial Arts Federation, I think is what it stands for. And so I did this, and they would do it like every few months, and then at the end there would be like a grand champion sort of scenario, depending on the standings. Now I had two male instructors who are about my age, and they were, when I started, some belts ahead of me. I ended up kind of catching up to them at some point, but I remember Grandmaster Morgan wanted them to teach me cat form. And Grandmaster Berger at the time said, no, she's not the right belt yet. She can't learn cat form. But he had the boys teach me in secret. Okay. And then we ended up going to a tournament where he said, you're going to do cat form. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And Grandmaster Berger was going to be there, but even more, he ended up on the panel of judges. So I had to walk up and present myself and, kneel and be like, I'm Brandy. And when I said I was doing cat form, his face didn't change a lot, but it was enough to know it was like, and then I had to do it. And at the end of it, I was worried, would he be mad? And maybe he was at Grandmaster Morgan. I don't know. Maybe he got in trouble for it. But at that time, he told me I did a good job. And so that was like, whew, that was a good moment. And my second moment that I am going to share is another tournament time. We had a place called Kin's Hapkido that was down in UKKA. And when I went there, we went a couple times, but we went there kind of just for fun and to spar with them and compete. They only had one girl at the time. So when I registered and paid my dues and stuff, they actually like, well, we only have one girl. So if you want, you can fight the boys too. Okay, I'm going to fight the boys too then. Now, by this time, I had kind of caught up in belt enough that I was in the same group as my instructors. And that was the best second place I ever took, because I did beat my instructor, and I did only lose to another Taekwondo guy. So he to me was unbeatable. And that one time that I beat him, best second place ever. He was third.
Wow. Wow, that's cool. All right. What is your favorite story about Grandmaster Morgan?
There's probably a lot, and if you don't mind, I think I will probably tell like two. So he often would tell us stories, or he would tell us kind of inspirational things before the class. And in fact, I think one time he kind of even had us try to do like a meditation to get our chi, which is like this energy within. Really hard for me at the time, but I think I can do it now. But there was a time where one of my instructors, I was supposed to be learning how to do a jump spinning back kick. And I could not seem to get it in the moment. My body did not want to. I almost used the word that I wasn't going to use. And so Grandmaster Morgan said, we no longer say I can't. Okay, we can no longer say I can't. And I thought of all the ways I could say around can't, and saying I can't meant doing a number of push-ups at the time. And I can't anymore. Not because I can't, but because I won't. I refuse to can't. Because what I think he taught me in that moment was that I can't is a mentality that's self-defeating. Even if my body didn't want to do a jump spinning back kick, I was going to push myself until I could figure out how to at least get off the ground a little bit. And I think that this I can mentality that he inspired in me drove me really to challenge my body physically and mentally. And I would say that I don't usually share this with people, but I'm a person who has struggled with anxiety. And it is this I can that makes me do the things that I can do. Fear is the thing that says I can't, and it's strength and faith that says, yes, you can and you will. And I would thank him for that. The second story that sticks out to me that I remember him telling was when he was a new black belt. And when he was a new black belt, he kind of described it as, he was kind of cocky, he said at the time. So he said that he ended up having to go to a different studio, and he was sparring or was matched with this person who was like a white belt or something. And at the time he was kind of like, why are we doing this? And then I think, to use his words, and they just came to me, that this white belt cleaned his clock. Have you heard him say cleaned his clock? Okay. This is an old phrase then, but it's stuck with me. You know what it means. And then the guy, after he cleaned his clock, walked over, took off his white belt, dropped it on the floor, and put on his black belt. And so, to me, this story is about not underestimating people and having humility. And I think that is something that's always really stuck with me from him.
Yeah. All right. What is your favorite story about Senior Master Siegfried?
As a instructor, I do want to say that he's always been really humorous and kind and patient. And I'm really glad that we've been able to stay connected. In fact, he's one of the people I asked to write a recommendation for me when I went into my graduate school program for clinical counseling. I will give a little context to this because I think this is probably my most memorable and kind of touching moment that he was able to share with me. So as I said, we did end up like training in the park because the studio had some financial hardships at the time. And so when I was to do my black belt, test, I had done my thesis and everything. And there wasn't the same kind of rigorous all-night test that Mo had or anything. And there wasn't really a black belt ceremony, but I was awarded my black belt right before we went to the national tournament. And so how Master Siegfried comes into this is years and years later, as an adult, I brought my kid, or I had learned of Grandmaster Berger's passing, and I attended his service to pay my respects because he was a very important figure to me. And there was so me and my kids and my husband were sitting in kind of the back row because I didn't know who would be there and just didn't want to, make a fuss, but sat there. And there was a part where they asked all the black belts to come up, and they're all getting up and they're in their gis and they line the rows, and there's quite a number of them, quite overwhelming and intimidating. And at the time, I did not feel that I could get up. I didn't feel that I was deserving to be there with and among them. And so they passed the belt down, Grandmaster Berger's belt. They pass it down, and they each say goodbye, and then they pass it back up. And this takes a little while, and then Master Siegfried's right in the front. He receives the belt after it's gone down, and he's looking at me from the front of the room like, you're supposed to be here. I'm like, oh. And then he walks all the way back. And this feels like forever to me. He just walks all the way back, and he presents Grandmaster Berger's belt, and I get to put my head on it, and it still smells like him, and I get to say my goodbye. And for me, that felt like my black belt ceremony. And he and Grandmaster Morgan later were like, once a black belt, always a black belt. But that moment for me was really important.
What does your black belt mean to you?
I had to really think about this, and it's more than just a belt. It's not something tangible. I feel like for me, it's not just something that you wear. I feel like it's a part of your identity. It's a part of my identity and my experiences. I feel like what it means is that to earn it, you really have to learn about yourself in the process, in terms of like, you're going to you're going to be uncomfortable physically, and you're going to push through challenges mentally and emotionally to earn it. And I think that comes at the end with a feeling of being confident in your craft and your skill. And I would say even a responsibility, because if you think about it, like, we're kind of deadly weapons, right? Right? So there's a responsibility in knowing when to use it and when not to use it, and to be able to harness that skill and that power. I think that means you need to be an honorable person. You need to have discipline and act with goodness. So to me, it means doing right by myself and others. And I think it means having both confidence and humility.
Right. How do you see your martial arts journey continuing?
So I do have 2 kids, and they're now in their teen years. When they were much younger, I did teach them some of the basics. They did not learn very easily from me. I ended up putting my son in Krav Maga, and so actually I got to study a little bit of that with him. I have always wanted to be able to use it in my therapy practice. I do quite a lot of yoga, and even though that's not martial arts, there are some huge similarities and crossovers in terms of learning about your connection to your mind and your body and your breathing. And actually, a lot of MMA fighters, I think, do yoga. And Grandmaster Morgan used to say that a lot of martial artists should do ballet. The boys always thought that was funny, and he threatened to put them in ballet. But yeah, I would actually like to see the possibility is of thinking about incorporating some kind of martial arts into my private practice. Has been something I've wanted to do, because I work with a lot of people who have trauma, either single traumas or complex traumas. And a lot of times, especially if it's been a violent trauma, there's this want and need to fight back. So I do kind of like a psychodynamic therapy. And we talk about, like, where do you feel tension in the body? Because your body stores emotions in trauma. And I've always found it useful to be able to, like, let somebody get to that experience where they are reliving it. And if it's like, what I'd like to be able to do is punch them right in the face or kick them, then, we do that. And so I do think there's a place for martial arts in therapeutic practice.
All right. What advice do you have for women in martial arts?
Don't worry about being underestimated. Use that as an edge. That gives you an element of surprise. And don't be discouraged.
Any last thoughts?
I don't think so. I do feel like I talked a lot. Sometimes I just keep going, so I think I'm good.
All right. Thank you again for sharing your memories with me and the entire UKKA family.
Thank you.
Thank you.